today's video, we'll be making a salty pork bowl inspired by one of my favorite takeout dishes. Now, unfortunately, this item was discontinued by the takeout place that I used to get it from, and I don't know why they made that decision because it was one of the most popular things on the menu. There was actually quite a bit of outrage online about it. Anyway, to get over the fact that I'm so upset about this, I decided to scour the internet for some copycat recipes and decided to recreate it at home using a few personal touches that you can only do when you're making this at home. Since the recipe is originally in Japanese, I decided that I wanted to share it to you guys and show you guys how to make it in English. A link to the original recipe will be down below, but like I said, it is written in Japanese. Without further ado, let's get started. So first things first, this is completely optional, but here I have some brown rice. In my family, we just buy the rice completely brown, meaning it's just taken out of the husk and nothing has been done to it. Now, I'm not sure what the technical terms are, but the rice is still covered by a layer of plant material that is impossible for humans to digest. This alone is edible, but like I said, unless you chew it hard enough to break down the outer shell, not much of the rice is going to be digested and is just going to pass through your body completely unharmed. Now, there's a process done to rice before it is actually packed and put in stores, obviously the white kind. The brown kind will just be this and just put in a bag. But like I said, it's hard to digest, so a lot of people prefer white rice. So what you do is put it in a machine that spins it around for a long time, smacking it against a hard surface to break down the outer shell, I guess. And what my family does is we have a personal, home-sized version of that machine. Obviously, if it's for stores, they'll just do it in bulk with a giant machine, but we have a sort of family-sized one, and we would adjust how long we do it for and get brown rice that's a lot easier to digest, or just full-on white rice, or anything in between. Obviously, the original takeout place will just have plain white rice, but I'm gonna do slightly brown rice just to add a little bit of flavor. Usually we'd go for a 7. This is the setting for white rice, and we usually go for a 7, which is like barely brown at all. I'm gonna go for a 6 today. Here is the rice after it's been taken out of the machine. As you can see, it's retained some of the brownness, but most of it is gone. But you can see that it's not as white as your typical white rice. The next step is to wash the rice until the water runs clear. This gets rid of the extra starchy layer that was in between the outer husk of the rice and the grain itself. Getting rid of the starchy layer helps the rice keep its individual integrity so that it doesn't turn into mush while cooking. I'm not sure why you're supposed to do this, but how I've been taught to do it, you're supposed to first pour some water into the rice, and this is filtered water from the sink, it's not just tap water. Once you pour in the water, you want to pour in enough to cover the rice completely, and without rinsing, you're supposed to dump out your first amount of water for some reason. Although if any rice floats to the top like this, you want to just gently tap it to help it sink to the bottom so you don't accidentally dump it out. So now I'm just dumping out the first pour, being careful not to dump out any rice. After dumping out the first pour, I'm just pouring in some more water, and from here you can actually start to rinse it. Rice that has freshly been ground using the machine still has a lot of starch on it because it's just been revealed. White rice that you buy in the store has already been handled and pushed around a whole bunch, but a lot of the starch has already fallen off, so it's a lot easier to wash. Basically, I'm just going to continue rinsing and pouring over and over again until this water is clear enough so that you can see the rice inside. After you finish washing the rice, you can see that the water is pretty clear and you can see the rice inside. this is what you want to go for. And I've already transferred the rice from the bowl I was washing in to the rice cooker bowl. A lot of people will just wash the rice in their rice cooker bowl, but we don't do that because we have a non-stick rice cooker bowl, and washing and rinsing and just messing with the rice inside the bowl can damage the coating. The next step is also kind of optional. I'm going to be adding these little wheat things. I'm not sure what they're called in English, but I'm pretty sure that wherever there's rice, they sell things that you can add to your rice, like extra grains and stuff like that, to make it more flavorful, and I'm going to be adding it. It's not an original part of the takeout dish that I'm recreating, but I had something similar before, and I think that this texture will taste really good with the pork topping. Depending on the brand, this stuff also has to be washed, but I read the package and it said that it's already pre-washed, so you just add it in. The instructions say to add 1 packet per cup of rice that you're cooking, and I added 3 cups to the bowl, so I'm adding 3 packets. After adding the 3 packets, I'm just using my finger to stir everything through so that it's all evenly incorporated. Adding that fogged up the water quite a bit, but I'm not gonna worry because they told me not to wash it. Next, I'm just gonna do the tried and true Asian finger trick where you stick your finger on top of the rice and see how high the water is. Traditionally, you should have water up until the first knuckle of your finger. It's not enough, so I'm gonna add some more. Now you can see that that's enough water. I've put it in the rice cooker, so I'm just gonna turn it on and let it do its thing. Obviously, there was a lot of extra steps to what I just did. I added the little wheat things, I used the rice grinding machine, I used brown rice instead of white rice, all that jazz. You really don't have to do that. All you have to do is take white rice, wash it, and cook it according to your traditional instructions, and it's just fine. But I added all those extra steps because I just thought this would taste good with the pork topping, and honestly, the original takeout dish is made using plain white rice and it was delicious, so there's no issue with just using plain white rice. Rice is gonna need some time to cook, so I'm gonna chop up some of the ingredients. You're gonna need some garlic, and you're also going to need some onions. I'm going to put the quantities for this recipe in the description down below, translated directly from the recipe that I'm linking. The quantities written down in the description are going to be slightly different from what I'm using here because I'm sizing up the recipe. The recipe is originally meant for 2 people only, but there's 4 people in my family. I also couldn't find the exact amount of meat that I needed to use in one single package, so I had to buy a couple packages. So I'm just adjusting the quantities of the ingredients that I need according to how much meat I have, so you don't need to copy me exactly, just do it according to the instructions below. So you need to mince your garlic as well as your onion. I'm gonna do that off camera and just show you the end product because I'm filming with one hand and I can't mince with one hand. Here are the ingredients all minced up. A tip for if you have trouble mincing or cutting onions in general. The whole thing where onions make you cry is a result of the onion juices evaporating as you cut them. So to prevent them from evaporating so fast, it's best if you take your peeled onion and put it in the refrigerator for a few minutes before cutting. That way the juices in the onion will be too cold to evaporate quickly. Obviously, you're going to have to chop up your onion before it returns to room temperature, but it does give you some time of tear-free onion cutting. Another tip is to use a very, very sharp knife. The juices that make you cry come from cells in the onion, and more juices are released if you crush the cells rather than cut them. So using a sharp knife will allow less juice to be released, therefore less juice will evaporate and make you cry. I like to share some helpful tips whenever I do cooking videos, so let me know if you enjoy them. There's still time until the rice cooks. I decided to chop up the garnish, which is some leeks. I just kind of poorly divided up the pieces, but I think I'll just use the entire thing. You can use as much or as little as you want, but the original dish is absolutely covered in leek, to the point that you honestly can't see the meat underneath. It adds a wonderful crunchy texture and a lot of flavor to the dish, and I really like it. I think it's an essential part to the dish. So here we go, the entire leek chopped. I know that there's different kinds of leeks out there. I recommend getting one from an Asian supermarket if you're not from Asia. There are Western types of leeks, and they're a lot sweeter than the Asian type, so yeah, just keep that in mind. Now I tossed everything into a bowl and stirred it through. Depending on which part of the leek, there are subtle differences in the texture and flavor, and in the original version, there's just a mix of all different types of leek parts scattered on top. Obviously, if you're not going to use the entire thing, you shouldn't just hack up different parts of the leek. That's just wasteful, so you don't have to do it. But if you are using the entire thing like me, I definitely recommend it. Once the rice finished cooking, I just already went ahead and started cutting up the meat. I'm using a fatty pork belly that is thinly sliced. Honestly, you don't even have to use pork. You can use whatever kind of meat you want as long as it's thinly sliced and is tender. I also recommend using a fatty cut of meat because the fat really helps the flavor and it goes well with the spiciness of the leek as well as a bit of sour from the lemon we're going to add later. Now we're really going to start cooking. You want to heat up a large pan and add a good amount of sesame oil. There's a specific amount for the recipe that I already wrote down below. You can use that. I'm just eyeballing it. You want to spread that around and let it heat up. After the sesame oil is nice and hot, you want to add your onions and garlic immediately. Then stir to cook them until it's fragrant and the onions have started to turn translucent. Make sure to keep an eye on the heat and the garlic. You do not want them to go brown and crispy. That adds bitterness and that's not what you want for this dish. I just went ahead and added the pork because I needed to be quick and couldn't do it on camera. It's okay if the pork is stuck together as long as it's not in a huge chunk. Just try to lay it as evenly as possible onto the frying pan and let it cook completely. Once the meat is no longer pink, I'm adding a mixture of dried chicken broth as well as cooking rice wine. Technically, you don't have to add the rice wine, it just gives a more authentically Asian flavor. You can just use liquid chicken broth and use less wine, or just use completely liquid chicken broth to replace it, or you can just dissolve powdered chicken broth in water and nothing else. Now you want to cook until there's not as much moisture. If you added the wine, you want to let the alcohol evaporate off so that it's no longer present. Once your mixture looks like this, you want to add salt and pepper to taste. You want to add enough salt so that the whole thing is too salty for you to want to eat it on your own, but not so salty that you don't want to eat it at all. I've already scooped some rice into a bowl and I'm going to add the meat on top. After adding the meat, I'm going to add a good amount of the sliced leeks. I hinted at this earlier, but on top of this, you want to squeeze the juice of some lemon. And finally, you want to sprinkle a little bit of sesame for a garnish. And now you're done! I hope you guys enjoy this as much as I do. I absolutely love it. I think it's great for the summer, especially with the saltiness and the sourness. It's just so good. I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!